Have you ever been scrolling through the news, watching clips from some far-off war, and just felt completely out of step with everyone else? Like, the world is full of this rage, everyone's picking a side, and you just feel this deep, crushing exhaustion. Well, let's get into what's going on there. And that feeling, that alienation, is really what we're talking about today. It's that strange disconnect when you see politicians shouting on TV and the news is treating conflict like some kind of violent football game. Society kind of tells you that if you're not fired up for one side or the other, you must be weak or maybe naive. But what if we've got that all wrong? What if we flip that idea completely on its head? What if that feeling isn't a flaw at all? What if it's actually a sign of something much, much deeper? A different kind of intelligence that's just immune to the madness. To really get this, we have to start by looking at this sort of psychological shield that seems to protect this kind of mind. It's almost like a built-in immunity to the most powerful tool of war there is, propaganda. Okay, so the number one tactic governments use to sell a war is this thing called othering. It's a very deliberate process of taking a person, a complex human being, and turning them into an abstract monster. It makes violence seem logical, even necessary. And honestly, most of our brains are biologically wired to fall for this. It's tribalism 101. So when the tribal brain gets shown a picture of a soldier from the other side, it just sees an enemy, a threat. But the anti-war brain, it sees something totally different. It almost can't help but humanize them. It sees a son, a brother, someone who is probably just as brainwashed by their own leaders and sent to die for a line on a map they didn't even draw. And here's the key part. This isn't about being overly emotional. It's actually the exact opposite. It's a really powerful form of logic that just refuses to be hijacked. Your mind sees the manufactured outrage for what it is, and it just says, nope. All right, so let's dig a little deeper, because this builds into the very core of this psychological wiring. It goes beyond simple logic and into this profound, almost burdensome kind of empathy. We can call it systemic empathy. And no, this is not just feeling sad for the victims you see on your screen. It's the ability to see the entire ripple effect, the butterfly effect, of a single act of violence, stretching out across generations. See, most people process conflict in a very simple, linear way. They hit us, so we hit them back, but harder. It's an eye for an eye. But the systemic thinker, they see the whole devastating cycle. They see how one explosion creates traumatized kids, who then grow up in poverty, which then breeds the exact kind of anger that fuels the next war. So when a bomb drops, you don't just see the flash. Your brain instantly starts calculating the fallout. You see the immediate trauma, yeah, but then you see the decades of economic ruin that follow, and you see the seeds of revenge being planted in that very same soil. It's a truly unbearable equation. So let's be really clear here. This isn't about fear. People with this mindset don't hate war because they're afraid of getting hurt. They hate it because they're kind of cursed with the clarity to see its real, astronomical price, while it seems like everyone else is just cheering for the fireworks. And all of this leads to a much higher level perspective, a real paradigm shift in how you even look at the whole idea of a nation or a conflict. Because when you zoom out, way, way out, the whole idea of dying for a piece of land starts to seem completely absurd. You see that borders are just artificial. They're imaginary lines drawn by people who wanted power and control, and they have very little to do with the actual human beings living their lives on either side. From this high-level view, the entire business of war starts to look like a dark, tragic manipulation, right? It's a system where ordinary, poor, and working-class people are convinced to go out and kill other ordinary, poor, and working-class people, all for the benefit of a tiny, powerful elite who will never, ever see a single moment of combat themselves. And that's the big aha moment. You see right through it. You recognize what might be the oldest and biggest scam in all of human history, and you just make a conscious, logical, and deeply moral choice to have no part in it. So, look, if you've been listening to this and nodding along, if you feel that sense of recognition, if you feel totally alone in a world that seems obsessed with conflict, this last part is for you. First and foremost, you are not weak. Your rejection of violence isn't a failure of courage. It's a demonstration of a profound, quiet strength. And you're not naive. Actually, you're seeing the world with a kind of clarity that most people just don't have, recognizing the complex machinery working behind the simple slogans. And you are definitely not crazy for feeling exhausted and alienated by the constant drumbeat of war. In fact, let's just reframe this whole experience. Your refusal to celebrate violence, your complete inability to just manufacture hatred for people you've never even met, these are not weaknesses. They are the absolute hallmarks of a highly evolved intelligence and a deeply intact humanity. What you're feeling is the heavy burden of being sane in a world that, some days, seems to have lost its mind. You need to hold on to that clarity. It's precious. And that leaves us with one final crucial question to think about. In a world that's constantly screaming about conflict, how do you protect that sanity? How do you hold on to your own peace when everything just feels broken? That's something really worth sitting with.